Can I just say, Tim, I feel for you. You get a tickle up from the tough lady who runs Parramatta for Parramatta being stage 2. I get a tickle up from the tough lady that runs Campbelltown last night for Metro only going to Oran Park in stage 1, not at Campbelltown. So I get it. It'd be more important. I think the bigger challenge for high-speed rail is convincing everybody it'll ever happen. Then you have the fight for where it goes. I was going to do some fancy chairman's address, but you've heard from me enough over last night already, so I thought I'd just scare my staff and go off piste a little bit and just get a little loose. They're all going, like they go, like, when don't you? But I suppose, having consumed last night, the lead up to this and today's discussion, that I suppose it's an appeal for all of Western Sydney, for all of us, to one, after 10 years of, we've been doing this for 10 years, just think, if we're sitting in this room 10 years ago, to imagine we'd be actually deciding the minutiae where all the infrastructure we're getting is going, which theatre is next upgraded, which city next gets a metro connection, which footy team next gets a stadium, which hamlet next gets a hospital or a university, and to keep that in perspective, because we tend to forget just what's been achieved in that 10 years. I spent all week getting, nasty bomb messages from the Chief of Staff to the Premier because we had the hide to advocate for a permanent Pondi at Penrith or for more metro lines in the future, and sort of said, you know what, dude, we've got a job to do too. We're advocates for this region and we won't stop advocating for this region, but we'll do it professionally and politely and appropriately, and we'll keep that creative tension going, but we aren't going to back down. But I think all of us have to commit to, before we trifurcate Western Sydney into Greater West, into the southwest and northwest, the inner west, the central city, we're still just Western Sydney. We still have to work together. We still have to have a collective approach to growing this region into the city it can be. And that's going to take some tough love for government, tough love for associations who are trying to cover the aspirations of the entire region at all times. I get news for all different levels of government. The federal government is that it can't just keep, and I'm your biggest pro-migration person to get in Australia. I love, my mob arrived as involuntary tourists 250 years ago. I had no say in the matter. But for those who've chosen to make Australia their home ever since, I go, you beauty, you're more Australian than I am because you chose this place. I had no say in the matter. So I'm not going to ever talk down migration. But if the federal treasury's addicted to migration for growth, then it better be addicted to helping state government pay for that growth and local government pay for that growth. And I'm also going to be a kid who grew up right next to. I was lucky enough to be in the middle class housing across the road from a big public housing estate. I think we're the only family in the street who didn't hate the housos back in those days, right? And we've come so far. So we'll keep advocating for social affordable housing. But we can't expect councils like Campbelltown and others to take 30% social affordable housing and get no rate income. So if Woollahra has 3%, it can start paying some money to Campbelltown for the no rates it gets on its 30 or 40% social affordable housing. So how about we get a bit serious about spreading the load around so that we can expect that? We can't have state governments just say, oh, it's a housing crisis, it's local government's fault. It partly is, and it's partly state government's fault, and it's partly us as citizens, as NIMBY's fault. It's partly the federal government's fault. It's everyone's fault, and we can all help fix it. So, in a way, there's just this sense of reminder to all of us in Greater Western Sydney who live in it, care about it, work for it, benefit from it, want to regulate it, operate it and fund it. We still need to do it together. And I'd say to councils, Parramatta Square, Sydney is the only city in Australia that successfully got 2 sort of CBDs, aspiring CBDs. I don't know how I can say it, but I said to Arnab before, I don't believe Commonwealth Bank's setting up any more regional offices. And for every local council who's squirreling away absolute commercial land because Google's going to move their global headquarters there, I don't mean to be rude, it ain't going to happen. So what we can have, though, is more vibrant communities that aren't just dormitory suburbs, but are vibrant with other forms of commercial. There's one council in Sydney who's still holding on to land for commercial who just got a university and a hospital. Guess what? They're your smart jobs. That is the smart jobs of the future. And a university and a hospital is commercial real estate. It is wonderful job generating stuff for in local government areas. So we're all going to have a dose of reality. And maybe because I'm old enough now to sort of move through and move on and send it to non-executive chairman, I'll just drop a hand bomb and let Adam deal with it. But Everybody has to recommit to all of us going forward. There's not enough money to pay for all of it. There's not enough time and resources. There's not enough ambition anymore to pay for all of it. I'm not saying the boom is over, but we've had an incredible 10 years and we now want a sustainable 50 years. It won't grow at the rate it grew for the last 10 years. That's just what population might, sadly, but the infrastructure, the services, the amenity, the commercial, everything probably won't grow at that rate. We need to be brave enough and mature enough to pick some winners, brave enough and mature enough to work out that there are stages as we go everywhere, while never losing sight of the absolute determination that the Greater West still needs more. The Greater West is still carrying its load for this nation. It's gone from Sydney's problem to Australia's solution, but that solution is going to require not only still ongoing public subsidy, it's going to require innovative private finance. The world is still flush of sovereign wealth funds and Aussie super funds. Why governments aren't even more tapping into that is beyond me. There's still a lot of liquidity and we have to find a better way to manage the PPPs. I don't care if one hospital deal went sour or one train didn't get built on time. I don't care. Fix it and keep doing it. Don't run away from it for that reason, because we all have to lean in to get this done. Now, I had the great pleasure to, again, off the back of that, to go back to East London early this year and lead a delegation of 30 Westies, glorified Westies, who first went there in 2019. We had a little pandemic in the way. We went back in 2024. It's a delicious opportunity for Greater Western Sydney to work with East London. Think Western Sydney here, think East London there. Same jurisdiction, same culture, same ethnology, except they've been doing this urban regen thing for about 30 years more than us. And so to go back there, to take this group that weren't exactly on a holiday of a lifetime, about 10 gigs a day for 5 days, dragged all over no West End theatre. This is all about visiting public housing sites in the old East End, or heading out to Dagenham, the equivalent of a Campbelltown distance now, to see where old factory sites are being redeveloped. But it's very instructive for us. So I thought it'd be good to quickly look at some of the stuff we did and to get some of my fellow East London alumni on stage to what can we keep learning, because Western Sydney should never be so proud it can't learn from others, because I've got to tell you, East London still is asking us about things, which is one of the great models of that exchange. So there they are. They're all, they let Aussies loose in front of the House of Commons waving the flag. Another group of bloody tourists, they thought, as the locals walked past, but to have lunch inside the Commons and talk to legislators about the similarity of challenge they went through and what we face is really important. So I might, if you scroll on, Nick, I think, there we go. Just some of the recommendations. I'll get these guys to come and talk about this. This thought, now, I haven't got my glasses, that's too small, I'll read that one. Scale, scale and more scale. East London taught us something. Not only scale of size of project, scale of ambition, scale of idea, scale of political measure, not only the physical project scale, but we've got, even with Todd's here, I'm so happy we've gone to the Todd issue. We could have gone twice as big. So, frankly, have Sydney stop holding back its scale. Let's think like a global, we like to tell everyone we're a global city, let's act like it and have the scale. Here's an eternal truth. Subsidised housing will forever require a subsidy. There's no way around it. Whether that's subsidies from one of 3 levels of government, whether it's the private sector, the very nature, it says what it does on the packet. It needs the subsidy, and we've got to keep reinvesting, particularly at a time, as Claire O'Neill spoke today, the lack of affordability for young Australian families, particularly in the West. We've got to attract the global capital and reform how we do that. And guess what? They're the boss. They've got the money. We want their money. We've got to start adapting to the rules they're going to play with. We can't just think we're God's own and everybody's just going to pour money into us if we're not prepared to adjust the processes, whether it's letting Jennifer and her team loose with direct dealing out of the Metropolis, whether it's getting councils to stop being assumed every developer, every mayor and every developer's a crook. As a community, we have to actually embrace business as unusual if we're going to move the dial as they've done in London. Density can be done well. We're even starting to do it well. It was done so badly and so much, particularly the Central River City, for so many years that we scared a community. I said John Faker was here last night from Burwood, and if you want an example of a guy that got 75% vote in a marginal seat by doing high-rise density done well, we all have to get better. Everybody, developers, councils, state planners, everybody, because density done well allows us to do more density. It gives us a permission slip from a community that we too often forget. And lastly, the collaboration. Whether you're collaborating with your community where you're putting social housing so a good lick of paint can change the attitudes, or whether it's collaborating across 3 levels of government to stop blaming each other and collaborating between the public sector and the private sector, all the collaborations help. I know some people say collaboration's a nice way to blame somebody else when something goes wrong. I'm an optimist that believes collaboration builds everybody into the picture and everybody signs on. So there's just some defining characteristics we've got to keep reminding ourselves if we're going to continue this grand crusade, this urban regeneration on global scale that has been Greater Western Sydney, that's done in such a short period of time, but has such a long tail. Long after I'm gone, there's going to be my grandchildren hopefully still seeing benefits.